Now welcome today's host, Mark Taylor.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Seeking the City Podcast. I'm your host, Mark Taylor, and today I've got a special guy, Nathan Gaddis. Some of you all even know Nathan in different ways, so man, thanks for joining us today. And man, over the years, we've known each other for a long time, probably over 30 years, and I came to know you when you were a teenager. And look, man, so tell me, this right here, like what do we got going on here, brother? Like,
gosh.
How old were you there?
So I actually, funny story. I actually remember taking that photo. Isn't that weird? It was in the vestibule of Campbellsville Baptist Church.
Gotcha.
And it was
Campbellsville,
on the
Kentucky.
steps. Yep, Campbellsville, Kentucky. It was on the steps, and I had just finished a concert. I was probably 17.
17, man.
16 or 17. Because that hair was in my senior picture. I
love it.
I wish I could have that hair back.
You went from that to what's going on here, man? You got to explain this. Now look, I got my kicks on, my Nike kicks today, but my Pandas, but what's going on with that?
So you have been doing your homework. I really appreciate the totality of the different sides of me. So I kind of hit this road. Well, let me just put it this way. Throughout my life, I'm an Enneagram 7. So I don't know if you know anything about the Enneagram, but I typically, as a 7, I will hop from one thing to another, like pretty rapidly. So right now it's sneakers. And I just, for the last probably 3 or 4 years, it's just been sneakers where I've just kind of been a sneakerhead. But I think I'm coming to an end of that, honestly. I think I'm getting to the point where I just like what I like. And I'm also, I feel like I'm getting a little too old to wear some of those sneakers.
How many pairs are we talking about, man?
Oh, it's not.
I thought Toby Mac had a bunch, but come on.
No. Toby has way more than me, and
I would agree with that.
Really, the extent of my collection is probably hanging on that door. The picture that you showed me. I mean, there's probably 7 more pair that are in a different area, but for the most part, those are the ones that I really wear all the time.
Dude, you guys start a museum or something for Nike. They'd love you for that.
Sheesh. There are a lot of people
and they're not endorsing you, right?
No, I wish.
But if they want to.
Great. Hey, I'm available. If you want to pay me to wear your shoes, I don't think they need me, but I would be open to that.
Nathan Gaddis, husband, father, Grammy-nominated singer-songwriter with True Vibe back in the day. And, of course, now president of D73 Digital Outreach, man. What a journey this has taken. So, man, for those that are not familiar with True Vibe, there's 2 albums right there. What a cool thing that you got to do there, man. That was when? Yeah. Back early 2000s, maybe?
Yeah, it was. We signed our record deal in October of 2000.
Yeah, man.
And put out our first record in May of 2001. That's cool. Then our second record, which was the record that was nominated for the Grammy, came out in September of 2002.
Yeah, man. And then transitioned to being worship leadership, I think, at churches.
I did. After my stint in the music business, music industry, touring and having the time of my life as a 24, 22, 23-year-old kid. After that was over, my wife and I were married in 2003, and it was so weird because we got married. We got married in Hawaii, and in front of like 30 of our closest friends and family. And we went on our honeymoon And then we got back, and the next week we were in New York City for the Grammys and walking the red carpet.
That's
and
wild, man.
it was a pretty incredible ride. I left Belmont to go on the road with True Vibe. And after that, I was a session singer in Nashville for a little bit, doing projects here and there for different things, and also doing some independent, music stuff. But I really started praying about, God, what do you want me to do next? And God just kept knocking on my heart and saying, I want you to go into local church ministry.
Yeah, so we first met in Kentucky, man, and so I know. Look at this, brother. They were honoring you back at Taylor County High School. What a cool thing, man! It's like
that was cool.
Yeah, the Hall of Greats right there.
It's just it's such a cool feeling when people honor you, because I just look at that and I'm like, I don't deserve that. But it was a very pleasant and heartfelt gratitude that I felt when I got word that I was going to be inducted into the first class of the Hall of Greats at
Dude, you deserve
high
it.
school.
Yeah. So now we're actually transitioning, and today we're talking about digital outreach strategies to reach your city, which is kind of your expertise now, and what the ministry you've rolled into now, and been able to help a lot of churches being able to cultivate to be healthy disciple making churches and engaging churches, outreach churches through digital outreach strategies. So I think the unique challenge that we face today is definitely the rate of which we change is, just happening all around us. The world has changed, of course. And then the more that we're in this last decade, especially, but over the previous 100 years combined, today we live in a digital age driven by mobility, on-demand technologies. Over the course of one generation, 40 years, we have seen just as handheld devices such as smartphones, tablets, creative mobile first lifestyles. And then, we must be diligent now, I think, to be able to learn and understand how we use these in cultural realities, of course, all around us. How do we use that to engage? How's a church use that?
It's interesting. It reminds me of one of my favorite quotes, and I hope that I don't butcher this for him, but there's a guy named Dave Adamson who is a church communication, kind of person in that field, in that world. I think he's Australian. I'm pretty sure he is. But he had a quote once, several years ago, that I came upon, and I was like, oh man, that hits, that hits the nail on the head. But he said, I believe the front door, let me see if I can get it right. I believe the front door to the church is now in a person's pocket. And most churches, most people's church experience starts in the digital world, even if it ends in the physical world.
Yeah.
And, or finishes in the physical world. So I think we're at a massive, shift and crossroads with churches. And, and you probably know this, but in my experience, in the 20 years that I've been doing this ministry, and then I helped form and get this company off the ground 10 years ago or 11 years ago, took over as president in 2022. But in my experience, the church is usually about 3 to 7 years behind the curve as far as being on the front lines of balancing that culture with biblical truths, if that makes any sense at all. And so what I see in my world as a church communication person who is trying to help churches utilize their social platforms to do ministry as opposed to just being a bulletin board for everything that they have going on at the church. And so the hardest part about that is getting churches and members of the church and staff members of the church to understand that it is possible to use your social platforms as a church to grow your ministry, to expand the reach of your church and expand the reach of the kingdom within your community, just by shifting a couple of things on your social platforms that make a big difference when it comes to engaging the outside crowd that aren't attending your church yet. Because here's the thing. I always say this in staff meetings. If we knew, if the church, Big C Church, if the Big C Church or the Little C churches in every city, if they knew of a physical location where you knew and they knew that over 80% of that community was going to physically be there at some point in the day for 2 to 3 hours a day, what would the church do to reach those people? And the answer is the church would do anything. If they knew that was the case, a physical location, they would set up a tent there and just have people there all the time, just so they could build conversation and build relationships with people and friendships with people that don't yet come to the church. Wow. And the reality is that is the digital space right now. That is where people are gathered. Over a third of the world's population is on Facebook. Almost close to that is Instagram. So that's where people are gathered, within your city. And so why aren't we utilizing every tool in our tool belt to capitalize on reaching those people that we normally would not have a chance to reach if we kept doing it the way that we have been doing it for years and years and years?
Yeah, Nathan, what's the goal then of digital outreach strategies for churches in your mind?
I think the goal for any digital outreach strategy or any digital strategy period is to help people outside of those ministries and those churches, help people outside of those churches find hope, find Jesus. And I always like to say it's kind of like dropping little breadcrumbs along the way, and people are just picking them up and following the breadcrumbs, and hopefully they follow right to your church. And so I think that it involves a lot of different things, a lot of different strategies. We've kind of worked really hard over the last probably 8 years of the 11 years of our existence, really honing in on a strategy that is specifically designed, a social media strategy that's specifically designed for churches, because you can't run a church social platform like you would a Fortune 500 company. They're totally different, avenues of communication and audience that you're trying to reach. And so if you can you reach those people in a way that connects them to the gospel message, then that is utilizing social platforms to enhance your ministry, not just promote your ministry.
I love that Design 373 is, strengthening a church's presence in gospel outreach. Do you think that most churches see using social media, using digital outreaches, their platforms, their channels, to telling people who they are and when they meet?
I think it's a good mixture. Well, I don't know if it's a good mixture or a balanced mixture, because I think most churches, and I'm speaking in very broad terms, right? Because there are tens of thousands of churches in America. So I would say that most churches are not using social media to enhance their ministry. I think most churches use it to promote the ministries that they have going on, rather than to just be a ministry in and of itself. And so that's why you see, if you go to any church, like for the listeners, go to any church social page in your community and look on their feed, look at their timeline, look at their page in and of itself, and just start scrolling and count how many times they're inviting you to something. Count how many times they're asking you to be somewhere or to do something, rather than just encouraging you and even discipling you without you even really realizing it through the content that they're creating. How many churches do that? Right. And that's the difference maker, man. If you can adjust the thought process and take it from being, okay, because here's the thing. every ministry leader that I've ever met at any church that we've ever worked with, they all obviously they think their ministry is very, very important and it should be promoted, right? The problem becomes when all of the church staff thinks that all of their ministries are very, very important and need to be promoted. And that's what leads churches to just making their social media a page that just talks about, here's this coming up, come to this. Yeah. Here's this, come to this. We have a student thing happening, come to this, tell your friends, come to this, as opposed to just being like, how can we pray for you today?
Yeah.
Because with social media in particular, it's all about algorithms. Everything is about algorithms. And statistically, we know this. Let's take Facebook, for example. A lot of people talk about Facebook is dying and blah, blah, blah. It's not. It's still growing. It's still the biggest true social media platform in existence. All the others are just kind of broadcast channels, what we call in the communication world.
So the importance of digital tools and social media in community engagement, church websites, social media, channels, apps, they could be used for more than just telling who they are and when they meet. A church should be rethinking, right, as far as their digital outreach strategy to be effective tools to engage, transform, equip, mobilize. Where do you see helping design 373 and what your organization provides to churches? What's the importance of ways to use social media?
Well, I'll tell you what, a church that doesn't take advantage of the algorithms that exist on social platforms is missing a massive opportunity. Because here's what we know. Let's take Facebook, for example. The most important algorithm of Facebook is conversation. Any social platform algorithm, the most important algorithm is engagement. So if you can build engagement, however that looks, and it looks different on different platforms. Instagram's different than Facebook, and I can go through that if you want. But let's just take Facebook, for example. The algorithm, the most important algorithm on Facebook is conversation. So statistically, we know this. If conversation isn't happening on your church page, on your church posts, people commenting and engaging in conversation inside the comment section, if that's not happening on your church page, then statistically we know that most of the people who even follow your page are never seeing the content that you're putting out, because it's not telling the algorithm that this must be important. But when you have conversation built into it and you have a team of people, what we call digital missionaries, members of your church that understand, that are trained and understand the strategy that the church is using on social platforms, when they are in there and they're conversing back and forth, then that tells the algorithm, hey, this is an important conversation. We're going to push this to everybody. And suddenly you have way more people being reached than before. And so conversation is everything. With Instagram, it's just kind of like the amount of times that you add it to your story or send it in a private message to somebody to show them, like if it's a good graphic or a good message or content. All of that is the measuring stick. And so if the measuring stick is engagement, then what is the church doing to take advantage of that engagement algorithm? Because if they're not, they're missing out on a greater population of people that desperately need the hope of Jesus and desperately need the message that church is providing.
Yeah, and I love that term, digital missionaries, using social media to be digital missionaries. And some people may not see themselves that way because, and they're doing this every day. They're engaging, they're communicating, they're sharing, they're inspiring, they're influencing, whatever it may be. But just if we were to highlight a couple of things about social media seems to be primary medium, of course, to connect and communicate with each other. Of course, the church, social media is an incredible tool that allows people to stay connected locally and globally, update each other on what is happening in their lives, share recorded sermons if it were a church, cast live streaming services, events. We saw that during COVID more so than ever, and then invite people to the local church. Social media can be a powerful opportunity for church to become a digital missionaries. As you said, 58% of non-Christians, there's one study says that have said that someone has shared their faith with them online, and yet only 28% of people feel comfortable even sharing their faith online. And then social media allows the church to be able to connect with multiple audiences, multiple touch points across multiple channels.
I would love to see hear the statistic about the difference in, like you said, 53% of people say that someone has shared their faith or has shared their 58%. I would like to see the percentage of the people who have actually done it in real life, in person, because I would guess that number is much lower now in today's culture. That's a sad statistic, but I would love to know that. Because here's the reality, Mark. Non-Christians, they don't read the Bible, but they do read Christians. They read us every single day, and they're looking for things to shoot holes in. And so becoming a church that is engaging with the people outside of their church page, or outside of their church in general, that's how Jesus wins the day. I believe it. And I've seen it. I've seen it happen. I've seen churches make the shift, and suddenly they have an influx of new people and new guests that come in and are like, "Hey, I found you on social media. Been following you for a while. Thought I'd give you check it out for myself in person." And suddenly their faith journey begins in that, that arena. And so it's kind of like, if we know that non-Christians don't read the Bible, but they do read us, what are we saying? What are your people in your church saying? Are they being obnoxious on social media? Are they being overly political on social media? Are they being nasty? Because that's what the world is seeing from most of the American church right now, I believe. And so training digital missionaries in your church to use their words, Scripture is very clear. It says, that our words are like a honeycomb, and our words, gracious words, are like a honeycomb, or the Colossians verse where it talks about use your words wisely, season them with salt, and make the most of every opportunity that you have as a follower of Jesus to really kind of give the message of grace and truth and love. And but the key to that is living wisely and understanding that our words need to be seasoned correctly. Because when they're not seasoned correctly, all it does is make people want to spit it out of their mouth. But when something is seasoned perfectly, you just can't get enough of it. Right.
And it's compelling. Yeah. And it goes back to how will they believe unless they hear? How will they hear unless someone proclaims, shares it? And then how would they even share it if no one's sent? So they could be sending digital missionaries in all kinds of ways every day, and maybe rethink this as far as digital outreach strategies. And now, Nathan, there may be somebody listening in that says, look, but you don't understand where we live, where we are in the United States, or, our size church or whatever. You've worked with all kinds of size churches, different denominations, different parts of the United States, and you're seeing effectiveness and impact, gospel impact, with helping them with digital outreach strategies. So we're going to encourage, people to look at your information for contact in our show notes for this episode. And as we wrap up today, any digital outreach trends that you see in 2025?
Well, I think the trend is, it's interesting. This is an interesting and fresh question, because literally I had because we run analytics for all the churches that we partner with. So I'm running analytics and I'm looking at things that Meta is telling me about their church account or whatever. And one of the biggest eye openers that I saw last week is that in this one particular church that we work with, and they are in the state of Georgia. And one particular church that we work with, the analytic came back and said, 78% of the people who are responding or seeing your posts are non-followers of the page.
Wow.
And only whatever that, 22% was the church members. So the church was reaching more non-followers of their church than they were their own followers. That, number one, is a win, right? The other thing that I found interesting is the content at a different church. This was a different church now, but the content of that analytic was telling me that most people will engage in this particular church. Most people will engage with text only posts, not graphics or videos.
Wow.
Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Like, that blew my mind when I read that. I was like, wait a minute, that's not what it's supposed to be. Like, everybody's posting pictures and videos and reels and all of the sermon recaps and all of this stuff. But this church, for whatever reason, the culture of this city is that in which most people like to engage in just text format.
Wow.
And it's like, wait, that's crazy to me.
Yeah.
I'm also seeing a big trend in going back to just photos. And this is going to be kind of
as just a static post.
Yeah, like photos and graphic content.
Okay.
Because here's what I'll tell you this, and this is kind of a hot take. And I've said this before in some podcasts, interviews that I've done, and but it's kind of a hot take. But I believe in the next probably 5 years, we're going to see a trend that is going back towards Facebook. And let me tell you why, before any of your listeners just
start throwing stuff at the screen.
Yeah, they're going to do that anyway. But let me tell you why. And it's one of those things. I was messaging one time with Brady Scherer, and I made a comment about this, what I'm telling you right now, and he was like, "Man, that's gold. Like, you might be right. You might be onto something there." I'm going to use my son as the example. A while back, my son was like, "Hey, why haven't you accepted my friend request?" And I was like, "Friend request? Like what?" And he goes, "On Facebook." I'm like, "Wait, you're on Facebook?" And he was like, "Yeah, a bunch of me and a bunch of my friends, ended up going back to Facebook because we're just tired of seeing the same stuff over and over on TikTok and Instagram. It's like doom scrolling, and we don't ever communicate with each other. We have a better community inside of Facebook and contacting with each other and having fun together than just watching the same old stuff over and over and over on TikTok and Instagram." And that blew my mind. And I was like, wait, could it be that the younger generation, and especially I think the Gen Alphas, as they grow and get older, could it be that they are going to crave the community that is possible on Facebook, that's not possible on any other platform? Facebook is, like I said, is really the only true social media platform. All the others are broadcast channels.
Yeah.
And you can actually have groups. You can have, it was interesting because several years ago, Facebook had never done any ads whatsoever, public ads on TV or anything. And then one year during the Super Bowl, you see ads. And what did they choose to promote during that ad? Groups.
Yep.
because groups are where community happens.
That's
And
good.
you can build a group of anything. And what we try to tell the churches that we partner with is you can have affinity groups that are under the umbrella of your church, like a ping pong group that somebody just kind of takes a hold of and leads and invites people from the community. Hey, come and play ping pong. We're going to have a ping pong tournament. But if you call it ping pong to them, they'll slap you in the face because it's table tennis, because that's how serious they are, right? And so you can have all of these affinity groups underneath the umbrella of your church and really start to do life and community with people outside of your church walls that don't even come to your church. And then instead of shoving it down their throat every time you're talking on social media, then you can, for big events like Easter or Christmas or things like that, you get in the group and you go, hey, I don't know if any of you guys have a church to go to for Christmas services or Christmas Eve or Easter, but I would love for us to just sit together at my church. If you guys don't have a place to go, if you do, great. If you don't, come hang out with me. And that kind of Jesus thinking, forward thinking, Jesus inspired conversation and doing life with people, that's what's going to make a difference in the lives of the people that aren't yet in the church.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I don't know if that answers the question or not.
Yeah, it's good because if people would go back and listen to the last couple of episodes, with some of our young adult leaders of different churches and ministries, worship events and different things, that's what they're seeing among Gen Z and like you said, Beta, Alpha. So that's community is what they're returning back to, authenticity in those relationships in community. So we'll see if that comes to be true of Facebook or whatever. Maybe the others start adjusting to that as well, is returning back to true community among those platforms.
One of the trends that I'm seeing most, and if we're not careful, we can kind of fall into, a pattern that's really difficult to get out of, honestly. But the photos of people, and I'm writing this down so I can talk through it. The photos, like I said in the beginning, churches are historically 3 to 7 years behind the 8 ball, right, on anything. So now what we're seeing, the trend, is churches are finally getting on board with having photos of their people. And whether that is a Monday morning photo dump that they take pictures on the weekend and then they post, hey, we had a great weekend. And this is going to ruffle some feathers. But I believe if we're not careful as the church, our Facebook, our social platforms, Instagram, TikTok, whatever you use, if we're not careful, those platforms can very easily make a shift and turn into glorified yearbooks for your people. And what I mean by that is if you're posting, if your intention is we got to post our people, we got to show the life of the church. That's what everyone says. We need to show the life that's happening inside the church so more people will come. And I have a rude awakening for some churches in that most people in your church don't care, or outside of your church, they don't care. They don't care about the pictures that you're showing. They want to know the difference that you're making in the world. They want to know the difference that you're making in the community. And all that posting pictures does. Now, I think, don't hear what I'm not saying. I think pictures are important. I think people do need to see the inside of the church and the life that's happening with your people. But there's this hyper-focused thing that's happening with churches on their social platforms where they think every post has to have a picture of somebody, a real person in their church, rather than a beautifully designed graphic or even a video. And I think that's a mistake, because churches, people outside of your church, they don't care, number one. And number two, people inside your church do exactly what you and I did when we were in high school and middle school. When at the end of the school year, when we would get our yearbook, the very first thing that any sane individual did was to flip to the very back in the index, find your name, see how many pages you were featured on. Then you would go to those pages and look at yourself first.
Right.
And then you would go back to the beginning and just start scanning, but not until you made sure that you were in it. And I think when I say churches have a tendency or will have a tendency to fall into the glorified yearbook category, it's because of that, because your people will stop engaging on those. If they go so long without seeing any pictures of themselves, or if you're hyper focused on pictures and you're just scrolling as somebody outside of your church or even inside your church are scrolling, they see the pictures and they go, I'm just going to skip. It's the same content over and over. And so you have to create content that's stopping the scroll. An example of this would be, I was meeting with a church, just consulting with them. And we were going through their timeline of their social channels. And they said they had this beautiful, it was an incredible picture of one of their maintenance people rolling a stack of chairs into the auditorium. And he was looking at the camera, smiling. It was a great picture. And they didn't know why they didn't have any engagement on it, because in the copy of the post, it was like, we're saving a seat for you. Come and join us for worship, so-and-so at so-and-so time. And they had zero engagement on it. I was like, well, do an experiment with me. Next week, use the same picture and put your message that you have in the content, at least the big idea, the sticky point, which is we're saving a seat for you. Put that text over the picture, on the picture. And suddenly somebody who is never going to share a post because they don't know who that guy is, suddenly you've turned a picture into shareable content. And just like that, it shifted everything, and it became this engaging post because people were like, oh, the message is right there. It's like, it becomes kind of like a meme. The message is right there on the front. I'm going to share this because it's literally saying, hey, we're going to save a seat for you at so-and-so church. And I think that's the difference. The other trend I'm seeing is professional photos. People don't care about anymore. I mean, you can take photos with your iPhone. I mean, my kids are begging for disposable cameras or old digital cameras that are not phones, but like old school digital cameras. And because they like the quality. Well, you and I both know that quality standards, that those two things are terrible quality, but they love it. Like they can't get enough of it. So
there's something more raw about it, right?
It is. And so churches that won't start capturing pictures because they feel like they're not going to be professional enough, or they're not going to be good enough. This is your time to shine, because you don't have to have good pictures to create
staged
content. Yeah, it's crazy. And it's taking off incredibly well, especially in the groups that we work with digital missionaries, because they can go in the church with their phones and literally like hold their phone, like as they're walking into the church building, hold their phone like right here and just record as they're walking in.
Yeah. And
that suddenly becomes an incredible real opportunity, REEL. And it's simple. Anybody can do it.
Yeah.
And so you got digital missionaries that are snapping pictures in the lobby, snapping pictures of the worship services, of the pastor preaching, and suddenly all of that content can come to the digital manager or the communications director, or us if we're partnered with the church, and we can create content using those pictures. The problem with pictures is when you just do a photo dump and there's not a message attached to it, or the message is just like in the copy of the photo dump itself, but then you have to scroll through all the pictures. That's not working anymore. And we're seeing a steady decline in engagement with that type of post.
That's good. Yeah, and I think it's going to help a lot of people that's listening in. And I was at a youth outreach event this past weekend, and I was really impressed with their highlight video for some of the events, the past events. And I thought that's
Yeah.
incredible work. But then I started looking around. There were 3 or 4 teenagers walking around with different cameras that were just getting the footage. They were being digital missionaries, and it was
Yeah.
just raw. It was
Yeah.
organic. It was just really photojournalistic, and it was just happening. And instead of just some staged, professional company, not that you can't hire those people. There's times for
Right.
that. So, well, that's good content, and I, hopefully,
And mentally, it's less distracting.
yeah,
Like when you
that's right.
have a professional photographer walking around with a long throw lens and just snapping pictures, that's intimidating for most people in a church.
Right.
But when we're so accustomed to using our phones to snap things and think, like, people don't think anything of it. When somebody in front of you that's in the middle of worship raises their phone and snaps a picture, I don't think anything of it anymore.
Right.
Maybe 15, 20 years ago, I would have been like, come on, man, put that down. But now we're all kind of conditioned for it. But when we see the big cameras, we get distracted. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, what are they taking pictures for? What are they doing this for? But at the same time, no one would question a member of the church just going, hey, snap, 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 walking in with the camera, just filming it.
Yeah.
It makes it so easy to get really good content.
That's a good point. Well, man, as we wrap up today, what a great conversation. We could talk all day. And, my 2 greatest
man.
passions is emerging technologies and serving the church. And I love that Design 373 is actually an organization that can help exactly that, digital outreach strategies for churches. So we'll make sure they have a way to contact you. And, man, thanks for your time. I know you're a busy guy.
Man, it's a pleasure.
But look, as we close, we always like to finish up any what we call "That's So God, That's So Good." Any God moments you want to share with listeners that may have happened recently?
I'll share a God moment for one of our clients, one of the churches that we partner with. I posted about it a little bit ago, but we had a church it's a smaller church. They run about 500 to 600 people on a weekend. I say smaller, but I should probably say normal size church. Like it's not a small church. That's actually a big church. Normal church is like 50 to 100, right? But anyway, I digress. This church has about 500 to 600 people on the weekend, and they were doing a good Palm Sunday event, like a special presentation, and they had a goal. They wanted to see 900 people come through their doors for this one particular presentation. And so I said, okay, it's a great goal. Like that's a good goal, especially when you have 500 to 600 on a weekend. So let's see what we can do. So we put together a plan, an event marketing plan, and they decided they wanted to use $150 to promote this event. Only $150. So we take that money and we diversify a bunch of different social platform ads. And part of the strategy is things that they do, like invite cards and that they give out to their people to hand out. So it's a collective work between us as a company and them as a church. And the weekend comes and goes. Monday morning, I text the communication director and I say, hey, just wanted to check in. How did the event go this weekend? I know they were doing two services. And he said, man, it was incredible. He said, we wanted, our goal was 900 people and we had 1,600 people show up.
Whoa.
And it blew everybody away. And they were like, oh my gosh, this is so great. And so I absolutely consider that a God win or a God moment. Because I believe that God is really, really good at blowing our minds and really, really good at exceeding our expectations, because we could never in a million years even they would have never set a goal of 1,600. Never.
Right.
Like that's outrageous with their weekly attendance. And God just takes what their goal is and multiplies it and goes, yeah, that's a good goal, but watch this. And it was just this beautiful God moment of him ordaining things and working things all together. And I think that was a really cool story for us as a team to read and experience with them. So
that's good stuff. Yeah. So hopefully that'll inspire and mobilize those that may be listening in. And we've got people listening in at 44 cities. So if you're a church out there and you're needing help with digital outreach strategies, or maybe it's something that absolutely scares you to death to think about using technology, that's what Nathan and his team are here to do. And I've seen some of their impact all around the United States. And so we want to encourage you to reach out to them, see what they can do to help you get started, so that it would be God's glory that would be magnified, but then also be good for your city. So, well, man, Nathan, I appreciate it, brother. And we'll have another conversation. We'll pick right back up and see what we can do to help churches make more disciples.
Pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
All right, sir.
That'll do it for this episode. Thank you for listening to and supporting the Seeking the City podcast. Now, if you like the sound of this, please subscribe to this podcast. If you want your question answered or have a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, send us a message at connect@seekingthecity.org.